So what do you see when you look at Suncrest? If you just moved over from Illinois this summer and it's your first or second time here, you're having a lot of new experiences as you're engaged here. You're looking around and forming ideas about Suncrest, maybe even forming ideas about church, especially if it's been a while since you've been in church. Surveys tell us that the first time that a guest walks into a church, they decide much of what they will think and feel about that church in the first 10 minutes. By the time you park your car, receive assistance for your kids through our guest experience team, take a sip of coffee from our complimentary cafe, receive a printed program from a greeter, find a seat, check out the Suncrest app, and hear the music of one song, most people have decided if they will ever come back. Now let me be crystal clear. If you are new to Suncrest, if you are new to faith, if you are new to church, we really hope that you come back. We hope that this is a place where good and important things take place for you. Regardless of your past experiences with church, good, bad, or mixed, we believe that God has you right where He intends for you to be. We believe that you're not here by accident. And I'm wildly curious about what you see when you step into Suncrest Church. Do you see a building? God has been good to us. We have a nice building. It works well. It's big enough for us to grow for a while in 3, eventually 4 weekend services. Our children's spaces are wonderful. If you haven't seen the early childhood area yet, I encourage you to check that out sometime. And God has opened doors for us to build a new building where we grow enough, when we grow enough that that's needed. We have land for the future just 1 mile away. It's right over that direction on 231. And I love the future home for Suncrest. But I like this building too. Did you know that the color of the chairs that you're sitting in right now, it's called espresso. Espresso. Kind of classy. And it's also outstanding color when you spill your coffee because it blends right in. That's what's going on there. Now, we're not encouraging food fights in the auditorium, but accidents do happen from time to time. If you ask most people point blank, what's a church? The first thing that comes to mind is a building. And that's understandable. Most of us are concrete thinkers. We're tactile experiencers. Where is Suncrest? We would say it's on Parish Avenue in St. John. It's right there. But consider that question just a little bit more. What is a church? What is Suncrest? After reflecting a little bit more, you might answer, I've heard some positive things about Suncrest. Isn't Suncrest an organization that Pastor Greg and some other people lead that does some good things in the community? They probably use financial gifts to help kids and students and homeless people and elderly folks and such. Isn't that what churches do? Maybe you heard the story about the little girl who was sitting in church. She was getting restless as the pastor's message dragged on. And finally, she leaned over to her mother and she whispered, "Mommy, if we give him the money now, will he let us go?" That doesn't happen at Suncrest, the dragging on part at least. But seeing the church and perceiving it as an organization that has benevolent and generous goals, that's an understandable answer as well. Well, this summer in our message series, Good News for Bad Christians, on the weekends and in our quiet times through the Suncrest app throughout every day, we've been tracking with the Apostle Paul's correspondence with a real, live, local church. And in the 2 chapters that we're going to focus on tonight, the 2 chapters of Paul's letter, 1 Corinthians 12 and 1 Corinthians 13, Paul gives his answer to our question, what's a church? As some of you know, Paul is my favorite ancient guy outside of Jesus. He is my hero for at least 7 reasons that I don't have time to tell you about tonight. But Paul wrote his answer to a church located in an ancient city in Greece. That was a long time ago in a faraway place. But Paul's answer still provides a great definition for church here and now. It's a visionary definition for us to step into even this week. When I was a little kid, also a long time ago in a faraway place, someone taught me this poem. Maybe you learned this too. Put your fingers together like this, and it's, this is the church, this is the steeple. Open the doors and see all the people. All right, I'm going to ask you to try that with me. Can you do that? Get, kind of limber up a little bit here, and bring your hands together and do this. And then you got to close it up, all right? And then it's, say it with me. This is the church. This is the steeple. Open the doors and see all the people. We would say at Suncrest, see all the changed lives, right? Now, as you kind of unlock there, be careful because I don't want you to cramp up or anything. Everybody okay? I'm a little concerned about this weekend. We'll have 4 baptisms and 6 broken wrists through the service, but we'll see how that goes. So this building does not even have a steeple, but some church buildings do. And buildings are important tools. And finances and organizational structures do matter. But that simple children's poem highlights and harmonizes with Paul's answer to the question, what is a church? Christ's church is people. People. Another apostle named Peter agreed with Paul's answer. Peter was a blue-collar man, a fisherman by trade, who became an influential church leader. Peter got to spend 3 years of his life with Jesus, 24/7, 365 for 3 years. And then he played the key role in the early church in Jerusalem. And Peter used these words to describe church. He said, you are a chosen people, a people belonging to God. According to Peter and Paul, a local church, a church like Suncrest, is a group of people unified by one profound conviction and one prominent practice. The church is a group of people unified, bound together, interlocked by one profound conviction, and unified, bound together, interlocked in pursuit of one prominent practice. So what's the unifying conviction? Well, in chapter 12, verse 3 of Paul's letter, he says that the Holy Spirit inspired unifying conviction that ties everyone in the church together is Jesus is Lord. Jesus is Lord. Clearly, we are not united. We are not unified in our convictions regarding the Chicago Cubs. This time of year, it's strong, various opinions about baseball, Cubs fans, Sox fans, and of course the truly spiritual Cardinal fans. Tied for first place right now, as we sit here right now. We are not necessarily united. We are not necessarily unified in our preferences when it comes to music or decor or a myriad of other subjects that we might list. Some options don't really matter at all. Some choices actually require judgment calls and decisions about how we will handle it at Suncrest. We have to pick some way to do this. And so we research and we consider and we organize with intentionality. We pursue healthy habits and wise business practices, sound leadership processes. Last week, Greg described Paul's directions for the Corinthian church in another part of his letter. In chapter 14, after bringing up a handful of cultural dynamics and examples of how that local church had made some bad judgment calls, he tells them everything should be done in a fitting and orderly way. Figure it out. Make some smart adjustments, Paul says. But if Jesus clearly speaks to a subject, that's different. When Jesus speaks, it's simple. We are united, interlocked, because Suncrest belongs to Jesus. This is his church. His mark is on the doors. His heart must be our heart. His priorities become our priorities. His mission is our mission. And this matter of conviction is not of small consequence. In his letter, Paul describes it as hot or cold. He says there is a posture of actually what he calls cursing Jesus. And there's the posture of embracing the conviction that Jesus is Lord. That's why around here, it's all about Jesus. We are all in, fully devoted to Jesus. It is not that Jesus gets a vote or Jesus offers some good suggestions to us, encouraging words, inspiring thoughts, positive energy. No, Jesus is Lord. He is our authority. He is our leader. He is large and in charge. And that means we aspire to a culture free from celebrities around Suncrest. Jesus is the one we worship. If you were here last weekend, you heard Greg describe a conversation that comes up in new churches that we start. If, or actually you should say when, someone says after a worship service, I didn't really like that song that we sang in church today. It wasn't my favorite. A healthy response from our church planters, from our pastors is, well, luckily we weren't worshiping you, so it's okay. Jesus is the one that we worship. He is our example, and his example is incredibly unselfish. Suncrest is not a place of perks and titles and seniority and insider benefits. Leaders don't get special designated parking places. In fact, you can gauge the maturity and the leadership buy-in around here by how far away from the doors leaders park their cars, especially February 10 when the temperature is -10 and the wind is howling. At Suncrest, we don't just learn about how Jesus lived. We learn to live like Jesus lived because we recognize him as our example. It's our unifying conviction that Jesus is Lord in all phases of our lives. That's simple to understand, but really challenging. It's challenging beyond belief. But we are a group of people who believe with all of our hearts that Suncrest is Christ's church, and we, both person by person and corporately together, belong to Jesus. It's our strong, unifying conviction that Jesus is Lord. So what's our unifying practice? In a word, love. This is the part of Paul's letter that we read at weddings. He says love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy or boast. It is not self-seeking or easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. Isn't that sweet? Actually, it is. And it is powerful. In a marriage, love is powerful. In Jesus' church, love is powerful. Love is the most powerful force available in this broken world. In his letter, Paul says, and now these three remain, faith, hope, and love. Faith and hope are strong forces to be reckoned with, but love, Paul says, the greatest of these is love. So here's how we see things at Suncrest. Our world is broken. We sang about that earlier. Everything was perfect when God created the universe. Everything was beautiful. But Adam and Eve ruined it. And I would have done the same thing. Dan would have messed it up probably sooner or in a more dramatically horrific way. We all go our own way, and brokenness is the consequence. Again, last week, regardless of your political perspective, the news was filled with evidence that our government is broken. Wednesday, I attended the funeral of the grandson of one of my best friends. Jaden was 9 years old. Jaden was born with severe physical challenges. He was not supposed to live past 1 week. He made it to his 9th birthday, but he died. And we stood in that cemetery grieving together with Kyle and Rachel, Jaden's parents. And that's brokenness on top of brokenness. Our communities are broken by prejudice and addictions and such. Our families are broken by divorce and sibling rivalry and such. Truly, if we're honest with ourselves, we don't have to see anything beyond our own faces in the bathroom mirror in the morning to see brokenness. But Jesus came, and he brought redemption. He paid the price for our defiance at the cross. He redeems us, his church. And with the incredible power of his love, the kind of love that Paul describes in his letter, we are given by God the mission of redemption and restoration. We are called to wade into brokenness and to be used by God to change lives, to redeem, to restore together. Now, the only way that happens, the only way that's going to happen is when together, interlocked, we live in the power of this unifying practice of love. The only way this works well is by loving each other. And Paul uses the metaphor of a human body so that we can see who and what a church is supposed to be. In chapter 12, verse 12, Paul says, one body, but many parts. One body, many parts. Paul says that the church is like a human body with 2 hands and 2 feet and a head and a mouth, and behind the scenes, hidden parts too. There's a stomach and there's a liver, many, many parts. Now, when love is our unifying practice, the various parts of the body work well together. They connect together, and they function together. And it's amazing. Love is beautiful and highly functional. When there's love, people experience restoration. Brokenness meets restoration, and ultimately, restoration wins. Around Suncrest, we say if we see changed lives, then we know that we're winning. But we also say if lives are not being changed, then we know we're failing. So let's do what Paul does in his letter. Let's lean into this metaphor of a human body. In chapter 12, he goes on to describe how a body can experience dysfunction when love is not the prominent practice and other attitudes like jealousy and rivalry and prejudice take over, then the body does not function well. Paul says love is not projection. He says, if I am an eye, and I like being an eye, and I think eyes really matter, and I expect everyone to be eyes, that actually is not helpful. In verse 17, he writes, if the whole body were an eye, how would we hear anything? So don't expect everyone to be like you. One body, many parts. One church, many gifts. He says love is not elevation. Paul says don't lift up one part of the body so much that you get weird about it. If you love music, don't say, oh, Chris is such a great musician. I love when he plays piano. Chris is wonderful. Chris is amazing. If you think about it, Chris is only one letter away from Christ. And so Chris. No. One body, many parts. One church, many gifts. Paul says love is not devaluation. Paul says the eye cannot say to the hand, I don't need you. First of all, that isn't true. For the body to function, we need eyes and we need hands. And Paul says we need some less honorable parts too. He says that some of those less honorable parts are indispensable. Try living without a heart or a liver. Can't see them, but you definitely need them. I did some medical research this week. Did you know that your appendix, which is located in the lower right abdomen area, previously considered unnecessary, is now considered helpful to the body? Some medical experts now believe that the appendix helps the body by storehousing good bacteria and rebooting the digestive system after a sickness that included struggling with diarrhea. And so it's not a front page kind of a function. But if you're just heading out of being sick and after struggling with diarrhea, you are loving your appendix. One body, many, many, many parts. Love is not amputation. So Paul does not mention amputation, but it rhymes, and I just threw that in for fun. One body, many parts. One church, many gifts. But here's the summary. Paul does say this: love is not division. The body is a no quarreling, no slander, no self-destruction zone. Love is our prominent practice. And so tonight, let me highlight a few Suncrest parts. Heather Rosenwinkel is a Suncrest hand. Heather grew up in the Lutheran tradition, attended a Lutheran school, came to Suncrest after experiencing some difficult ingredients in life, including divorce. As a single mom, Heather participated in a divorce care group at Suncrest, expressed her faith by being baptized at Suncrest. In time, she co-led a divorce care group, then led a divorce care group, and now is on staff as executive assistant for Greg. She is a tremendous helping hand to Greg and to me. Steve Butera is a Suncrest mouth. Steve has been part of the body here for several years, and a few years ago he was battling cancer, and God has answered our prayers for Steve. Steve is strong and going at it today. I believe Steve has spoken with more people about baptism than all of the paid pastors around here, other than maybe two. Lots of baptism conversations. He's spoken with some of you on your way to expressing your faith in that way. He is a wonderful gift to the Suncrest body. Jenny Mitchell has taught 4- and 5-year-old kids at Suncrest for decades. Miss Jenny is a relational leader, and her heart for children is extraordinary. In her teaching and leading, she expresses the heart of Jesus for each child, for each parent. She is a tremendous gift to the Suncrest body. And so here's the point. You are part of the body. You are in this. You are. You might be tempted in one way or another to discount that, to not believe that you're up to that or up for that somehow, some way. But you are part of the body. Do you know what part God intends for you to be? Are you functioning as Jesus intends for you? Hundreds of us around here are fully functioning, interlocked, united, unified by that one conviction that Jesus is Lord, and pursuing that one practice to love like Jesus has first loved us. Are you? We don't need a ton more teachers or worship leaders, but the body needs you to fully function, for us to restore brokenness together.